Certainly. Let's move on to Chapter 4, where the atmosphere grows heavier as the reality of the impending war starts to settle in, and the characters begin to understand the broader implications of their training and powers. Chapter 4, Echoes of the Past. Year 110, Eastern Region, Floor 1, A Mysterious Visit. The sun had barely risen when Zakuro felt a sudden shift in the air. He had been awake for hours, completing his morning exercises under Daigo's watchful gaze. His body was starting to feel the rhythm of the martial arts, his strikes sharper, his balance steadier. But the unease in the air was palpable, the kind of tension that precedes a storm. As the day began to unfold, a visitor arrived, unannounced. A woman, clad in a long, dark cloak with intricate patterns of silver thread that glinted in the morning light. She carried herself with an aura of quiet power, her presence enough to cause a stir among the people of the Eastern region, even those who had never met her. Zakuro was just finishing his training when Daigo spoke in a low, calm voice. "Zakuro, there's someone you need to meet." The woman stood just outside the small home, waiting, her eyes scanning the area with an unsettling precision. She didn't seem to mind the bustling city around her, as if she were an observer, untouched by the commotion of the world. Zakuro felt a strange pull, a sense of recognition that he couldn't quite place. He walked toward her slowly, every step deliberate. He could feel his heart beat faster, his instincts warning him, but he pushed the feeling aside. If there was one thing Daigo had taught him, it was to stay calm and focused in the face of the unknown. As he approached, the woman spoke, her voice low yet clear. "You are Zekuro, the one who's awakened his spirit user abilities. I've been watching you." Zakuro stopped short, his brows furrowing in confusion. "Who are you? And how do you know about that?" The woman smiled faintly, a cryptic expression. "I know more than you realize, but before we go into that, let me introduce myself. I am Ayumi." At the mention of her name, Zakuro's mind raced. He had heard the name before, whispered in the streets and taverns. Ayumi, one of the highest-ranking officers in the Eastern region, known for her skill in combat and her mysterious connections to the upper floors. But she was also known for something else. She was rumored to be a spirit user herself, one of the few who had mastered the art to its fullest extent. "You're a spirit user?" Zakuro asked, his voice tinged with awe and uncertainty. Ayumi nodded. "Yes, I've been studying the way of the spirit user for many years, but I didn't come here to talk about my abilities. I came because you're about to face a much greater challenge than simple training." Zakuro glanced at Daigo, who stood behind him, observing silently. The old man's expression remained unreadable, but there was a flicker of something in his eyes. Perhaps concern, perhaps understanding, but Zakuro couldn't quite place it. "Why are you here, then?" Zakuro asked, still trying to process everything. "What's this about a greater challenge?" Ayumi stepped closer, her eyes never leaving his. "You're not the only one who possesses this power. The spirit users, those who can channel their soul's energy into combat, are few. But there are more than you realize, and there are some among them who are not content to remain in the shadows." Zakuro's stomach tightened. "What do you mean?" "War is coming," Ayumi said, her tone colder now, heavier with the weight of unspoken truths. "And the spirit users will be the key to the conflict. The Seven Thrones, those who govern each region, are preparing for war. Some regions are already taking steps to ensure their superiority, and they will stop at nothing to secure their place. Your power, Zakuro, is something they will want to control." Zakuro's heart pounded in his chest. "I don't want any part of that." "I'm not asking you to join anyone," Ayumi replied softly, though there was an edge to her voice. "But whether you like it or not, the world is changing, and you will have to make a choice. You will be forced to choose a side, or stand alone." Zakuro turned his gaze to Daigo, who had remained silent up until now. The old man's eyes softened, and for a moment, Zakuro could see the weight of his mentor's years, the depth of his experience. "It's true," Daigo said quietly, his voice like gravel. "The power you wield is dangerous. It attracts those who would use it for their own ends. You must learn to control it, not just for your survival, but for the survival of those you care about." Zakuro's mind reeled. The weight of the world seemed to press down on him all at once. He wasn't ready for this. He wasn't ready for war. "You've been training for this moment your whole life, Zakuro." Daigo continued, his voice steady. The path ahead will be difficult, but you must decide now. Will you stand by and let your power be used by others? Or will you take control of it and use it to shape your own destiny? Zakuro clenched his fists, his mind a storm of thoughts and emotions. He didn't know what the future held. He didn't know if he was ready. But he knew one thing for sure. He couldn't back down now. The world was changing, and so was he. I'll fight, Zakuro said, his voice resolute. I'll fight for what's right, even if I have to do it alone. Ayumi's eyes glinted with approval, though her expression remained guarded. Very well. But know this, the path you've chosen will not be an easy one, and there will be those who will try to break you, to control you. You must be prepared. Zakuro nodded, a fierce determination settling in his chest. He would be ready. Whatever the future held, he would face it head on. In Chapter 4, the stakes are raised as Zakuro faces the reality of his powers and the approaching war. Ayumi's warning about the dangers of the spirit user powers, along with the political turmoil, sets the stage for the tough decisions Zakuro must make in the coming chapters. Would you like to continue with the next chapter, or focus on another aspect of the story? Great! Let's continue Heaven's Foundation, Fist of the Seven Thrones, with Chapter 5. Picking up after the mounting tensions and character developments of the previous chapters, Chapter 5 should mark a turning point. The beginning of the preliminary floor-level tournament battles, deepening the inter-character rivalries, and laying the groundwork for the upper floor conflicts. Chapter 5. Crimson Eyes in the Dust. The plaza of Floor 1 had never been this loud. Not during market season, not even during the rare festival of gates when nobles descended from their towers to bless the people with mock charity. This was something else entirely. This was war. Not the kind with banners, blades, and falling bodies, yet. But the crackling energy in the air, the roar of the gathered crowd, the taste of iron in one's mouth, it all screamed of war. A war of fists, pride, survival, and spectacle. And standing barefoot in the fighting pit, Zakuro Kenshi grinned like it was his birthday. Dust curled up around his ankles as he rolled his shoulders. So this is what the big leagues feel like, huh? He muttered, mostly to himself. Across from him, his opponent was already bouncing on his heels, a wiry older teen with sharp shoulders and even sharper eyes. He bore the insignia of a Floor 3 syndicate, tattooed directly into the side of his neck. Zakuro didn't know his name. Didn't need to. All he needed was a target. Ayumi watched from the tower balcony above, arms folded, eyes calculating. Ren stood beside her, his arms crossed, but his fingers twitched unconsciously every time Zakuro landed a clean movement. Beside them, Baranoshi remained still, so still he looked like a statue, but his crimson eyes never left the boy in the pit. May and Emmy were somewhere in the side crowd, tucked between food stalls and betting gangs, Emmy biting her lip and May practically vibrating with nervous anticipation. The bell rang. And Zakuro moved. His first step was wrong. His second was wild. His third was genius. He twisted under a low kick, faked a fall, then lashed out with an upward elbow that caught his opponent square in the ribs. A wet cough burst from the teen's mouth, and before he could recover, Zakuro was already behind him. Don't blink, Zakuro whispered. Lightning point. A precise jab to the lower back, one of the spinal nodes Daigo had taught him about just last week. The crowd didn't understand what had happened. The opponent did, right before he collapsed to the ground, muscles spasming, eyes wide with shocked paralysis. The bell rang again. Silence followed. Then a roar. Floor 1's citizens, thieves, vendors, orphans, mercs, everyone exploded into noise. Not because it was a short fight. Not because they understood the technique, but because someone from the slums had just dropped a syndicate fighter with nothing but guts, instinct, and a smirk. Ayumi adjusted her glasses. He's adapting faster than we thought. Ren scoffed, his ego sore. He's reckless. One mistake and he'll break his neck. Baranachi said nothing. But a single ember of red energy sparked at the corner of his eye. Elsewhere, beneath the eastern castle, in a chapel that no longer served gods, a soft chant echoed. Sister Veska moved through the incense, her bare feet silent on the cracked stone floor. One of her shadows whispered, "The boy's begun." She smiled. Not kindly, not humanly. So has the unraveling. She reached into a basin of dark water and watched the surface ripple. In the distorted reflection, Zakuro's face shimmered, then cracked like a mirror, replaced by a burning city skyline. The vision blurred. Time was shifting. Threads were tangling. It begins, as it always must, Vesca whispered. One spark in the dust, one child who refuses to kneel. Back on floor 1, Zakuro sat on a crate behind the arena, towel around his neck, a banana in one hand, and a bruised shoulder in the other. Okay, he said to no one. That hurt. May stormed up to him, jabbing a finger into his forehead. You absolute maniac! What was that fall at the beginning? You could have broken your skull. It was a fake-out, he said defensively, mouth full. I meant to almost die. Emmy handed him a wrapped rice ball. You were amazing, Zek, but next time, can you not nearly die for dramatic effect? Hey, drama is half the win, he winked. The other half is the lightning point. Baranacci appeared suddenly behind them. Zakuro nearly choked. You'll be in round 2, Baranacci said, voice flat. Don't relax yet. Floor 2's got killers, and they've seen your moves now. Then I guess I'll just have to invent some new ones, Zakuro said, grinning. Baranacci stared. Be careful. Some of them don't play by the same rules you do. And just like that, he walked away. Zakuro watched him go, his grin fading only slightly. Something in Baranacci's voice? That wasn't advice. That was a warning. Would you like me to continue directly with Chapter 6, or focus on a specific character's subplot next, like Emmy May's situation, or Ayumi's covert plans? Great! Here's the continuation with Chapter 6 of Heaven's Foundation, Fist of the Seven Thrones, written in full light novel format using all compiled lore, tone, and structure. This chapter picks up directly after the conclusion of Chapter 5. Chapter 6, A Battle Without Rules. The moment the bell rang, the arena fell into breathless silence. Zakuro stood in the middle of the cracked stone ring, bare feet spread apart in a loose brawler stance, fists clenched tight at his sides. Across from him, the older youth, Muzin, a wiry fighter from floor 3, licked his lips and rolled his neck with a sick grin. There were no referees in this part of the tourney, only the old monk in the corner, watching with folded arms and closed eyes. He's gonna eat you alive, Kenshi, a kid muttered in the audience. Musin's dropped 6 guys this month. Zakuro didn't blink. He didn't have time for fear. He remembered Daigo's words from earlier that morning. When you face someone stronger, don't try to be stronger. Be faster. Be smarter. The fight ends the moment they think they've won. Muzin lunged, wild and confident, a flurry of elbows and knees aimed to crush the smaller opponent outright. Zakuro ducked under the elbow, twisted on his heel, and slammed his palm into Muzin's ribs. The hit landed, but not clean. Muzin absorbed the blow, grunted, and drove a knee into Zakuro's side. The pain lit up his torso like lightning, but Zakuro gritted his teeth and slipped backward, barely escaping the follow-up hook. He couldn't overpower him. Not yet, but he could disrupt. Zakuro dipped low, feinting a crouch. Muzin came in with a downward hammer fist, and Zakuro struck. Lightning point. His index and middle fingers darted forward like a snake, hitting just above Musin's hip. A split second later, Muzin staggered. His leg buckled, nerves spasming. The crowd roared. Zakuro didn't stop. He threw a wild left jab that missed on purpose, forcing Muzin to turn, and then he drove a knee straight into his exposed side. The crowd erupted louder. The monk's eye cracked open, just barely. Muzin shouted in fury and charged again, fists flying in a furious flurry. Zakuro backed up, guarding high, eating a glancing strike to the cheekbone. Blood splattered. The taste of copper bloomed in his mouth. His legs wobbled. The crowd wanted more. More blood. More heat. From the stands, Baranacci narrowed his eyes, arms folded across his chest. He's improvising, he muttered. Ren scoffed. He's getting beat. No, Ayumi corrected quietly, standing behind them, her expression unreadable. He's adapting. Below, Zakuro's eyes flashed green for an instant. The air pulsed faintly. His movements sharpened. He twisted into a low spin and swept Muzin's feet out from under him, then drove his foot into the older boy's chest, sending him skidding across the dirt and stone. The crowd howled. Muzin tried to rise, but one leg was dead. Zakuro closed in. He raised a fist and hesitated. The boy was groaning, hand raised in surrender. But there were no rules here. Zakuro's lips tightened. The crowd started chanting, "Finish it! Finish him!" His fist trembled in the air, but instead of striking, Zakuro turned away. The crowd erupted in boos. Rotten vegetables flew from the stands. Someone spat. Musen glared, humiliated. Zakuro walked off the ring, chest heaving. He didn't hear the crowd anymore, only the voice that lingered in his memory. True strength is choosing your moment and knowing when to walk away. Daigo stood under the archway of the shadows, arms crossed. He met Zakuro's eyes and nodded once. Backstage, later that evening. Zakuro winced as Daigo pressed a soaked cloth to the swelling on his cheek. "You're lucky that boy was tired," the old wanderer muttered. "He was mean, but not focused." "I could have finished him." Zakuro looked away. "I just didn't want to." Daigo studied him quietly. "You've got the instincts, but if you let them pull you every direction, you'll get lost in the chaos." Zakuro looked down at his fists. His knuckles still ached. "So what do I do?" Daigo gave a small smile. "You learn to fight with purpose. Next time, you won't hesitate. But it won't be for the crowd. It'll be for something greater." Footsteps echoed down the corridor. A familiar voice followed. "Well said," Ayumi's voice chimed, calm and cool. She stepped into view, flanked by 2 castle guards in light robes. Her violet eyes gleamed behind her glasses. "Zakuro Kenshi, you've made quite the impression." Daigo's body stiffened. He stepped between her and the boy. "He's not ready." "That's not your call anymore," Ayumi said, lifting a scroll sealed with a black ribbon. "He's been selected for the regional trials, floor 3 and above, night observation tier." Zakuro's eyes widened. "What?" "Try not to die," she said, already turning. "You've got 5 days." Meanwhile, across the region, at the base of the western tower, in the upper sanctum of a forgotten temple, a woman in pale robes lit black candles along the rim of a carved circle. Sister Veska knelt before the flame, her eyes shimmering with violet. "All pieces are in motion," she whispered. She reached toward the flame, and it flinched. "Let the pawns gather. Let the spark rise." Behind her, the shadows twisted. The wind fell silent. And then, we burn it all to the ground. Let me know if you'd like to continue with Chapter 7, or if you'd like to add new fights, characters, or scenes into the next part.